I want to tell you the greatest Hollywood film that has never been made. The greatest Hollywood film that has never been made. Does anyone ever ask you that question? If you could go back in time and have a beer or a coffee with anybody from history, who would it be? And I would choose to have coffee with a woman, a teacher actually, a school teacher called Annie. Annie Taylor. Does that ring any bells? Now, on October the 24th, 1901, Mrs. Taylor, that's what we're going to refer to as Mrs. Taylor, because she's a school teacher, she got into a rowing boat along with two companions. They left the shore and they rowed out to the middle of the river, and once there, they threw a barrel over the side of the boat. Are you with me? And then Mrs. Taylor climbed inside. After that, the two companions, they screwed the lid onto the barrel. One of them used a bicycle pump to compress air inside the barrel, and the other one sealed the hole with a cork. Then they pushed the barrel away from the side of the boat, Mrs. Taylor still inside. And one of the most incredible things about this story, about this event, is that it was Mrs. Taylor's 63rd birthday. Are you curious? What I'm doing here is I'm making use of a classic storytelling device. We don't have to start stories at the beginning. In fact, often it's best not to. If you've ever read a biography, they don't tend to start at the birth of their subject, do they? That's what we're doing here. We're starting in the action. This is called in media res in Latin, starting in with the action. And it's a great way to capture your viewers or your listeners or your readers' attention. You've got so many questions. Who is Mrs. Taylor? Why is she doing this thing? Give me some more questions. What other questions have you got?
Did she survive?
Did she survive? That's a great question. Did she survive? More questions. Did she get paid for this? Great question. More questions.
Did she have children?
Did she have children?
What was she running from?
What was she running from? Now, this is the story of an absolutely remarkable woman doing a terrible thing, or a terrifying thing, to escape from a desperate situation. Other questions you might have? Where did this thing take place? It's a great question.
What was her nationality?
What was her nationality? These are all great questions. And this is the idea. Because what we're doing here, this idea of starting in the action, not starting at the beginning, non-linear storytelling, it creates all these questions, this curiosity, you're compelled. And as seasoned experts or consumers of story, you know that all these questions will be answered. All you have to do is keep listening or watching or reading. That's the way it works. It's a classic technique. It's what we could refer to as a narrative hook. We say that, stories curiosify by nature. Or we could say that storytellers curiosify by design. But that's not always the case, is it? I mean, if you, for example, read newspapers, which is probably a very bad idea these days, but if you do, the stories that you see in newspapers are generally not designed for curiosity, are they? They're not written for mystique and mystery. You know, you don't see a headline, some person assassinated. You don't have to read right down to the bottom to find out who it was. You know, they've got what's sometimes called a pyramid structure, so the important things are at the head, and the details kind of trail off down to the end. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I kind of get the impression sometimes when stories are written for language learners, they tend to take this sort of structure. You see this a lot, don't you? So if the story of Mrs. Taylor, Annie Edson Taylor, to give her full name, was presented in a course book. By the way, anyone know what she was doing, what they were doing? Exactly. Who said that? Say it again. Mrs. Taylor, Annie Edson Taylor, at the age of 63, on her 63rd birthday, became the very first person ever to go over Niagara Falls as a stunt. You still don't know if she survived. There's still so many questions, and this is the way in. But if this story had been presented in a newspaper, this is what it would look like, and this is what we're talking about. This is everything you get. And I just think that when stories are presented like this, it doesn't really allow students to get involved in them deeper. And that's really important. Stories should not be given all at once. It's a slow release process, which is really what we're doing there. We have these things called stakes. And stakes are those questions that we ask. Is he or isn't she? Will they or won't they? You know, and these are the questions that keep us compelled, keep us curious, keep us watching, keep us reading, keep us listening. And this allows us to slow release. I think this is always one thing I'm thinking about when I'm lesson planning, materials writing, is what's the curiosity aspect here? What are the questions that students have in this part of the activity? When do they get answered? You know, this is always what I'm thinking. Quick release doesn't really help.